Nearly 2 decades after the disappearance of Alabama teen Natalee Holloway in Aruba, her mother's suspicions were confirmed. Natalee was killed by Joran Vanderloot. In a significant development, Vanderloot has finally disclosed the events of that fateful night after years of silence, shedding light on a case that captivated the public for 2 decades. The name Natalee Holloway became synonymous with heartbreak, mystery, and unrelenting hope, etching itself into the collective memory of a generation through a case that haunted headlines for 20 years. After enduring decades of uncertainty and deception, the long-suspected man has at last made a chilling confession, revealing a truth more disturbing than anyone could have imagined. The mystery surrounding Natalee's disappearance, which gripped the world for nearly 2 decades, has now been solved. But the unveiled truth may leave many shattered. The devastating truth of what happened to Natalee Holloway on that night in 2005 is about to be fully uncovered, providing closure to a case that has haunted many for years. For almost 2 decades, the world held on to fragments of the haunting mystery surrounding the 2005 disappearance of 18-year-old Natalee Holloway in Aruba, making it one of the most widely publicized unsolved cases of the century. The recent disturbing confession by longtime suspect Joran Vanderloot has shattered the silence and revealed even darker details than previously feared, bringing a new level of clarity to the case. The chilling details of Natalee's tragic end were disclosed in a transcript of a recorded FBI interview, where Vanderloot provided a harrowing account of the events leading to her demise. This confession, although not directly related to a murder charge, was part of a plea deal in which Vanderloot agreed to tell the truth about the events of that fateful night, alongside pleading guilty to wire fraud and extortion involving Natalee's mother, Beth Holloway. According to Vanderloot's statement, the tragic events unfolded after a night out at a local bar in Orangestad, Aruba, where he and Natalee found themselves alone on a beach, leading to an unwanted sexual advance by Vanderloot and a violent reaction when Natalee resisted, resulting in her tragic fate. Joran Vanderloot described the moment when Natalee Holloway stopped moving completely. Just steps away from her still body, Vanderloot saw a heavy cinder block lying in the sand, and without hesitation, he picked it up and slammed it down onto her head, killing her. He confessed to smashing her head in completely. According to the transcript, investigators asked him to clarify the type of block, and he pointed to the standard gray cinder blocks used in nearby buildings. Following this grim act, Vanderloot claimed to have dragged Natalee's lifeless body towards the ocean on a calm night, walked into the surf up to his knees, and pushed her body out into the dark water, hoping the tide would carry her away. He then nonchalantly walked back home as if nothing had happened. This horrifying confession was not only specific, but also consistent with long-standing speculations. To verify his statement, the FBI administered a polygraph test, which he passed, finally being considered truthful by Bureau standards. Federal prosecutors, including Assistant U.S. Attorney Lloyd People, acknowledged the weight of this confession, describing it as the closest thing to the truth about Natalee's fate. To corroborate parts of Vanderloot's statement, investigators revisited the Aruban coastline to compare the environment he described to the real location. Despite the shocking revelation, the haunting question remains: where is Natalee Holloway's body? The case brings forth the chilling confession that was buried for 18 years, revealing something darker than anyone had imagined. The spotlight zeroed in on Joanne Vanderloot from the moment Natalee Holloway vanished on May 30th, 2005. The 18-year-old from Mountain Brook, Alabama, was in Aruba on a senior class trip, celebrating graduation with her classmates when she was last seen leaving a popular nightclub with Vanderloot, then just 17, and never made it back to her hotel. The case of Natalee Holloway's disappearance became one of the most confounding and painful unsolved cases in recent memory. Vanderloot's story began to shift almost instantly after the incident. Initially, he claimed to have dropped Natalee off safely at her hotel, along with two friends, but later changed his account without explanation, stating that he had left her alone on the beach. The inconsistencies in his statements raised red flags as media attention exploded and police pressed for answers. Despite intense public scrutiny, multiple searches across the island and repeated interrogations, no concrete evidence, body, witness, or confessions surfaced. In the years that followed, Vanderloot remained in the public eye and appeared to embrace the attention by giving interviews, leaking tips, and making dramatic claims only to retract them later. In 2008, Dutch crime journalist Peter R. Dice secretly recorded Vanderloot seemingly confessing to Natalee's death. But when confronted, Vanderloot denied everything, claiming it was a setup. His manipulative behavior continued as he offered and retracted information, and in 2010, he made a cruel offer to Natalee's mother, Beth Holloway, in exchange for revealing where Natalee's remains could be found. This led to federal charges in the United States, but the real turning point came in 2008, October 2023. When Vanderloot, extradited from Peru where he was serving time for another woman's murder, entered a plea deal with U.S. prosecutors and confessed to the FBI. His confession detailed a violent attempt to sexually assault Natalee, leading to her death, and was backed by a polygraph test and treated as credible by authorities, marking the first solid and final account after nearly 20 years of lies. The chilling detail and lack of remorse in his confession revealed not just a killer, but a manipulator who held on to the truth like a trophy. The question remains as to why he confessed after holding on to the truth for so long. The arrests, shifting stories, and the ongoing search for Natalee Holloway have kept the case alive since her disappearance in 2005. Nick John and Abraham Jones, former security guards, were taken into custody under suspicion of kidnapping and murder. They had previously worked at the Allegro Hotel, which was closed for renovations at the time of their arrest. The reasons for their arrest were not fully explained by the authorities, but there were whispers implicating them based on statements from Joan Vanderloot and the Calpo brothers. Media speculation focused on their reputations for frequenting hotels to meet women, and at least one of them had a prior encounter with the law. However, the evidence against them was not sufficient, leading to their release on June 13th without being charged or conclusively tied to the crime. Shortly before their release, Joran Vanderloot and his associates, Deepak and Satish Kalpo, were arrested as primary suspects in the investigation. Deputy Police Chief Gerald Dumpig initially viewed them as the primary suspects, and their arrests were influenced by pressure from Natalee's family despite insufficient solid evidence. A government spokesperson erroneously declared Natalee dead on June 11th, retracting the statement later, adding to the confusion. Subsequently, more arrests followed, including a local DJ named Steve Gregory Crows on June 17th, and Jerian's father, Paulus Vanderloot, on June 22nd, both of whom were released on June 26th. Amidst this, the testimonies from Joan and the Calpo brothers began to unravel, with inconsistent and confusing versions of events. Their initial claims about dropping Natalee at the beach near the Marriott Hotel evolved and conflicted with each other, leading to police rejection of certain versions. Despite Deputy Police Chief Dumpig's belief that the beach story was closest to the truth, the lack of a body, physical evidence, and the constantly changing accounts prolonged the case. Even advanced tools, such as F-16 jets from the Dutch Air Force using infrared sensors to detect disturbances in the soil on July 4th, did not provide a breakthrough in the investigation. Natalee Holloway, an 18-year-old, disappeared on the final night of her graduation trip to Aruba in May 2005. Her disappearance captivated not only her loved ones, but also the global community, leading to a myriad of rumors and prolonged investigations. In 2023, Joanne Vanderloot, at the heart of the mystery, finally disclosed the unsettling truth about what really occurred on that fateful night. Contrary to his past confessions, this 2023 statement was part of a formal plea deal and aligned with long-held suspicions and early investigative theories. For nearly 2 decades, Natalee's parents lived in agonizing uncertainty, relentlessly pursuing every lead and version of the story offered by Vanderloot, despite his deceitful attempts to exploit their desperation for the truth. Despite extensive search efforts, including the involvement of divers, cadaver dogs, and advanced technology, no trace of Natalee's body was ever found. Vanderloot's confession has finally provided a clearer understanding of the events, revealing that the ocean likely erased all evidence of the crime over the course of nearly 20 years. Experts concur that the probability of recovering Natalee's remains after such a significant passage of time and natural elements is exceedingly slim. This harrowing account transcends being just a tale of a single heinous act, underscoring the profound impact of unyielding uncertainty and the relentless pursuit of truth. This is a story of manipulation, where a young woman's life was stolen in an instant, and her family fought for truth through decades of pain and deception. Even as the full truth surfaced, it came with a painful realization that justice in this case may never look the way anyone hoped. The world reacted to Natalee's brutal death with shock and sorrow, and her parents endured the heartbreak with resilience and determination. When a terrible incident occurred on the Caribbean island of Aruba, the attention of the world swiftly turned to the island's police force and to her heartbroken mother, Beth Twitty. What followed wasn't just a criminal investigation, but a deeply emotional and often bitter struggle between grief-stricken parents, Aruban officials, and the global media. From the very start, the Twitty family expressed sharp criticism toward Aruban authorities, accusing them of dragging their feet, missing vital leads, mishandling suspects, and lacking transparency. Beth Twitty's actions on the island stirred controversy, with some accusing her of pushing a one-sided narrative and discouraging Natalee's classmates from fully cooperating with investigators. However, the Twittys denied such claims, insisting that their focus was solely on seeking the truth. Beth Twitty publicly named Joan Vanderloot and the Kalpoe brothers as the individuals she believed were involved in her daughter's disappearance. After the Kalpoe brothers were briefly released from jail, Beth labeled them as criminals and declared their participation in a violent crime against Natalee. Following this, there were swift reactions from the Aruban community, with hundreds gathering outside the courthouse in Aranjasad, expressing their support for the accused individuals and demanding respect for Dutch laws. The backlash against Beth's statements was immediate, with Satish Kalpoe's lawyer threatening legal action and calling her statements outrageous and libelous. Beth later apologized to the people of Aruba, explaining that her words came from deep pain and frustration. Despite the challenges, Beth Twitty continued to stand by her beliefs, publishing her emotional account in the book Loving Natalee and vocalizing her conviction that Joran and the Kalpoes were responsible, emphasizing that giving up meant Natalee's case would be forgotten. A Dutch TV special aired hidden camera footage showing Van der Loot allegedly admitting involvement, which prompted Beth to call the video damning and confirm her fears. She even suggested that her daughter might have still been alive when Joran discarded her body into the sea. Beth accused Joran's father, Pauwels Vanderloot, of helping cover up the crime, leading to the Holloway family shifting their stance on tourism due to systemic failures. By September 2005, Beth publicly called for a boycott of Aruba and Dutch territories, with Alabama Governor Bob Riley standing beside her at a press conference on November 8th, urging Americans to avoid Aruba. While some U.S. governors and lawmakers echoed the call, others declined, and Aruban officials led by Prime Minister Nelson Oduber hit back, calling the boycott irresponsible and preposterous. In response, Aruba's tourism sector launched a full-scale campaign to rebuild its image, forming the Aruba Strategic Communications Task Force to speak on national TV and challenge negative portrayals. Amid politics, protests, and press, the anguish of a mother searching for her daughter persisted, leading to debates about the media's portrayal of Natalee's mother and the unfolding truth. The disappearance of Natalee Holloway captivated the world, evolving from a deeply personal tragedy for one Alabama family into one of the most sensational missing persons cases of the 21st century, largely due to media coverage. Natalee's face became ubiquitous in television, newspapers, and magazine covers across the United States, as networks like CNN, Fox News, and Microsoft and the National Broadcasting Corporation provided nearly non-stop coverage. From morning shows to late-night broadcasts, anchors recounted her story with growing urgency, turning the search for Natalee into a daily feature with expert panels, breaking news updates, and live shots from Aruba's beaches. The media's fascination stemmed from the elements of a young blonde, attractive high school graduate on a celebratory trip to an exotic Caribbean island, gone without a trace, capturing the public's attention and driving continuous media coverage. Throughout it all, Beth Holloway, Natalee's mother, remained the emotional anchor of the story. With determination in her voice and pain in her eyes, she became a constant figure on television screens. She immediately flew to Aruba after her daughter was reported missing, and quickly took control of the narrative, speaking directly to the press, pleading for help, and demanding answers from local authorities. Her appearances on shows like The Today Show, Larry King Live, and Nancy Grace gave the search for Natalee a deeply personal edge, drawing viewers across America into the heartbreak and hope that Beth represented. However, as the coverage intensified, so did the complications. The media frenzy kept pressure on Aruban investigators and ensured the case wasn't forgotten, but it also triggered a wave of criticism. Journalists and media watchdogs began pointing out that Natalee's case was receiving far more attention than most missing persons, especially those involving people of color or victims from less privileged backgrounds. During this period, the phrase missing white woman syndrome gained widespread use, drawing attention to how race, class, and appearance influenced which victims the media chose to spotlight. In Aruba, the growing media circus caused tension as frustration set in, and news reports often painted Aruban police in a negative light, impacting tourism and causing resentment to grow. What began as a humanitarian spotlight started to feel like a relentless invasion, and Joan Vanderloot, the last person seen with Natalee, was portrayed as the prime suspect and media villain, reigniting interest in the case with each new twist, confession, or denial. The drama of the case began to blur the lines between fact and fiction, truth and ratings, leading the media to scrutinize the investigation itself more than the disappearance, reporting even the smallest developments as massive updates. The presence of cameras on the island was enough to attract attention each time Jaron Vanderloot re-entered the news, whether due to legal trouble or another twist in his story. In 2010, when Vanderloot was arrested in Peru for the murder of Stephanie Flores, the media's focus intensified. Similarly, in 2023, when he was extradited to the United States and confessed to killing Natalee, the spotlight returned with full force. The resurgence of the case dominated headlines, leading to the rollout of specials, retrospectives, and investigative documentaries by the press. True crime programs, podcasts, and streaming platforms dedicated extensive hours to analyzing every aspect of the story. Various programs, including Line, NBC, 2020, and Netflix documentaries, revisited the story multiple times, featuring fresh interviews and archived footage in an attempt to reconstruct the events of that final night in Aruba. Over time, the Holloway case evolved into a media landmark, influencing the coverage of missing persons stories and prompting discussions about bias, ethics, and the responsibilities of the press. The extensive media coverage played a significant role in keeping Natalee's name alive, pressuring authorities to continue the investigation, and amplifying her mother's calls for justice. However, the case also exposed the flaws of sensational journalism, highlighting the rush to judgment, lack of accountability, and the tendency to exploit pain for ratings. What began as a search for a missing girl transformed into a story that the media couldn't seem to let go of, with every new development involving Joan Vanderloot pulling the narrative back into the spotlight. Even years later, the story of Natalee Holloway continues to evoke emotion, spark debate, and command global attention, refusing to fade from news cycles and public memory. The impact of the events in 2005 still resonates today, echoing through time and public consciousness. The judgment deserved by Jaron Vanderloot is a topic open for discussion, and we welcome your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.